All right, welcome. For those new to my channel, welcome. For those returning, welcome back. Appreciate your viewership. This is the Thursday night TTT on the greatest London loop. Not the greater, not the great, but the greatest London loop, which includes Leith Hill, and that is a lethal hill. Because man, oh man, did we have to put up a fight for that? So here's the squad that we are running today. We got Bobby, Jeff, DJ, Steve, Greg, Aaron, myself, and Rafa. And I gotta say, man, these guys, whew, this is a couple new names in terms of this week. Obviously, you guys know that in the world of Dirty Watts TTTs and really in TTTs in general, probably we teams swap around. People can make it. Some people are able to ride, some people aren't. One of the things I love about the Dirty Watts crew is that family is priority, life is priority, so they make sure that we have enough people to field the team no matter what life situation is going on. And so with that being said, let's get to the race. And so, like I mentioned before, we're on the greatest London loop, which is 25 and a half kilometers of fairly reasonably flat. If you look at the mini map, it looks pretty flat. But if you look at the map down at the bottom of the screen with sauce, you can see that there are little features in the road here and there. Some being a few percent, some being a lot more. We're about to hit a small little hill that goes up to I think 5 or 6%, and it's these kind of little bumps in the road that ultimately, if you're not in a squad that is familiar with riding, if you don't have a great leader, like Greg is Greg is the man. When he's on the ride with us, he takes control. He lets us know, hey, we ride in a when Greg's on the call, we ride in a fluid manner in the sense that we're not focused on a certain pace order. We're not focused on trying to trying to leave the last four guys, with as much energy as possible, and then, kind of break off other people. We're focused on staying together. We're focused on riding well, people hitting their numbers, people volunteering to get into the mix. And that, really becomes evident as we get further into the stage. You can see as all of us start to, familiarize ourselves a little bit better with each other's, pacing and abilities. You see, I jumped into that middle spot there because I'm the person that whenever I see, a large gap like that, I'll do my best to jump in order to, if I'm already surging, then I might as well jump into that gap. So that way the people that are, behind that gap can start to pull up a little bit easier. Part of, because I don't do Zwift workouts, part of my exercise is these little bursts here and there. And these, minute, 2 minute efforts or, whatever the race demands. And so as we start to make our way through the the banks of the London River, or the River Thames, whatever it's called. And for those of you who live in the UK near London or know more about geography than I do, please forgive my ignorance on that. I want to blame it on my American education, but I will leave it there. You guys can say what you will about me in the comments. All right, so as we are rolling down the road, everybody's just kind of staying grouped tight together, doing the best to just kind of get our pace going. So I'm going to jump forward to really when the action starts to happen, because as it is always on a TTT, we're rolling through together, passing some people, getting passed by people. Not this time, but did get passed by people. But we are, really doing what we can to make sure that we have what we need as a squad to get through Leith Hill. So as we get ready to cross the river one more time, this is where the action starts to kick up, specifically in chat. We're, on Discord coordinating how we're going to play this out, because at this point we're all, feeling good, but at the same time, the pace that we're keeping, which was a really strong pace and really aimed to take first place this time, considering we found out that Eat Dirt 2, which is the main rival for our team, was, I guess they didn't participate this time around because we didn't see them on the scoreboard. So we figured that, for whatever reason, they weren't there. So we knew that we had the opportunity to take first place this time around. So as we hit the escalator, we are doing our best to kind of stay together, using our weight advantage to bring people to the front on these, downhill periods, so we can kind of let that let that naturally, that natural flow of, people pushing to the front and then people getting recovery when they're behind them, and then kind of cycling through, so that way we're not leaving someone on the front. And so you see right now we got Smallwood, who I kept referring to as Smallville on the on Discord after the race, because you'll see why here in a minute. We got myself, Aaron, Steve, who really set a strong precedence this race. So one of the things that, before we get to the end, I'll spoil it now, is that, because we were going for first place, we were all pushing hard, encouraging each other. And ultimately what ended up happening is Steve, in the, throughout the race, we were pushing just hard enough to where Steve actually got promoted to a B cat rider. And so that took us from the latte division into the frappe division, which is a lot harder when it comes to the numbers, when you look at the pace that those guys keep. So so we ended up basically crossing the line fast enough to win the latte, had we have stayed there. But because we got bumped up to frappe, we did well. I'm not going to say exactly what position we got, because I'll post it at the end, but we did well. And so as we hit the hill here, you see another rider up front that we're just kind of doing our best to, you know, stay together, but knowing that, we're going to ultimately push through and pass him. We do our best to just kind of let each other know, like, hey, there's a rider there. Um, so that way we're not, we don't inadvertently get stuck behind them. Now, Aaron didn't have steering. And so the challenge is always with someone, with someone in that position, especially with the rest of us having steering, is making sure we're protecting that rider, no matter what situations came up. So when you're passing other teams or other riders, you don't want that person to get inadvertently stuck behind someone else, because and then they can't just pull themselves out and keep pushing. They have to, push really hard just to get away from them. So as we hit the base of this hill, now again, Leith Hill hasn't actually officially started. This is just the initial part of it, where, we're just kind of rolling through. And the idea was we were going to keep somewhere between 3.5 and 4 watts per kilogram to just kind of stay together. And you see we got Smallwood on the front, and just he set quite literally the perfect pacing for all of us, to kind of to match off of. And so usually I would stay towards the back of the group in order to, pick up anyone that starts to fall behind, because our team is, a good mixture of B's and C's. And so, oftentimes holding that 3.5 to 4.0 pace for someone in the C pace category, which is, what I'm in, is not easy to do. Now I'm at the point where I'm not like strong enough to push into the B pace category just yet, and I'm also not light enough to push into it. And so I'm focusing on getting stronger, because I don't want to, until FRR, I'm not going to, push to lose any more weight than where I'm at. And so as we're, climbing through the hill, we're just kind of staying paced off of Smallwood at the moment. And again, all of us are just doing our best to kind of stay in and around him, in order to, match his pace as best as possible. So I'm going to, continue fast forwarding here a bit, as we get further along in this hill. And so you can see as we're just kind of plowing through, it starts to rain out of nowhere. Ironically, we were all talking about weather situations and kind of how things roll in each part of our, where we live. And so as we're, kind of clustered around each other, looking like a school of fish, just trying to swim upriver, we are just, again, doing our best to hold the pace that is being set. And like I mentioned before, Smallwood just really did a great job of pacing everybody. Same thing, Steve would push up to the front and just kind of hold that pace. And then, Greg was making sure that we all, those of us that were in the front were aware of the guys behind us and making sure that we're not leaving them too far behind. And if you were to look at our chart on the side, you can see that everybody just stayed perfectly together. We really did a great job of ensuring that we all stayed together as a group. And now, as we start to hit the base of Leaf Hill, um, we are feeling it because we've already done quite a bit of climbing at this point, but we still have really what the hardest part of this race is to go, which is getting through Leaf Hill. And as you can see on the not only on the sauce chart down at the bottom, but also in the HUD, it ramps up very quickly. Like there is no opportunity to really rest as you get into Leaf Hill, the official start of the K1. And so as we hit the hill, we're all encouraging each other. Greg is, cracking the whip and making sure he's not that type, but he's is encouraging us and letting us know like, hey, make sure we're staying together. This is where these guys are at. This is how they're feeling. And I think like I don't know if it was just me because I at this point I was feeling good. I didn't I was my legs were hurting, but I didn't feel like normally I would be out of breath. You can see Aaron off to the left there. And so, even though there's no real draft at this point, it's still, we still want to make sure that we do our best to kind of keep him there. So it took me a little while to notice, but I pushed over to the left just a bit to get him behind me. Cause again, even if it's, a 2 watt savings is better than nothing. And if I can start edging over to the right little by little, it'll start pulling him to the right. And then the guys end up pushing left. And so we kind of do our best to stay together. But ultimately, he ends up getting pushed out uh, because of the pack dynamics. He ends up getting pushed out again. And so as we start going through this, this little town here, start passing other people, and we are, at this point, we are flying. We feel it, we see it. Um, but we are flying, and you can see like my heart rate's in the 170s. My pace is in the 3.5 to 4 watts per kilogram. And Greg is just constantly reminding us like, hey, we've got guys off the back, not far off the back, but like one not half a second, but like a up to a second off the back. And just he's making sure that we're not pushing too hard off the front, that we're losing them. And as you can see, we catch up to DW11, and just blow right through them. I mean, we like it's always, we always do our best to be courteous and say hi because you can see the mixture of different teams are kind of, bodies on the road, as it were, climbing up the hill. But we just started pushing right through everybody that we came up to. Normally we'd, message them in the chat, give them a thumbs up, stuff like that. But we were all motoring on like a rocket ship. And so we did, congratulate everybody after the fact. But, at this point, we're just focused on getting up on top of the hill as fast as we can. And, as we start to hit this, this little sort of flat segment, I started thinking about, okay, can I get a little bit of rest here? Because my legs were on fire. Ironically, my lungs weren't on fire. Like I was breathing well and I felt really good. And so you can see, Smallwood still kind of pushing on. I end up kind of bridging up to him as we kind of get in and through DW12 here. And so we're just kind of doing our best to, push through these guys. Because again, we don't want to stay intermixed with anybody. And so as we're getting closer to the top, Greg is reminding us like, hey, we've got our guys, we've got to be able to catch up. They're about a second or two off the back. And so at this point, it's focused on get to the top of the hill, and then we can all kind of regroup. And that's ultimately what ends up happening as we hit the KOM banner here. I didn't realize it at the time because I wasn't, I tried looking, but I didn't see the confetti for me. So I was like, I didn't PR this time, no big deal. I ended up breaking my PR by like a minute and a half. So I don't know why I didn't get the confetti. As you can see, I just passed Riz here, who is, my team captain on the ladder team. And so I saw his name pop up briefly, and I was like, wait, Riz was back there? And so, when I saw his name, I acknowledged it in my head and then refocused. And I was like, all right, got to keep going. We all ended up catching, pulling together at the top of the hill fairly quickly, which is always great because that gave us the opportunity to absolutely rocket down this hill. And so I'm going to fast forward through that part because the end of this is really where where we start to see the fallout of how this climb went. All right. So as you see, we're heading down the hill, hitting 70 kilometers an hour and speeding up. And ultimately, we end up kind of staying in the 80-ish kilometer range, which even at, right now I have it at 5x speed. It looks fast. When we were going down the hill, it was fast. Like we saw it, we knew it. We were all like, man, we are absolutely blazing down this hill. And again, using the heavier guys to kind of bridge to the front and pull everybody. I kept doing my best to, I would surge up and just kind of push as hard as I could for a few seconds so we can keep that momentum going. You see, we got MK there up front who ended up sticking with us quite a bit longer than I think we thought. And that's just, that's how it goes sometimes. You end up with riders from other teams that will do their best to kind of hold on to your wheel. And we didn't know this at the time, but we were getting a lot closer to DW10, which is our friendly rival. Obviously they're in the Dirty Watch family, but we always kind of give each other a good ribbing to encourage them to work harder. They encourage us to work harder and see who kind of gets to the line first. And so we ended up inadvertently pulling a couple of their guys back to their team. Now, I didn't know this at the time, but we left the pen like 3 minutes before they did. And so the fact that we caught them was absolute insanity. And so as we're getting ready to go up the escalator here, we're reminding each other like, hey, let's keep a steady pace, ramp up as soon as you hit the power. You see, we got DW10 right in front of us. And so we knew that at some point we were going to pass them. And so we're just again, talking through the strategy of like make sure you hit, especially this first part before you get to the escalator. I feel like this part here, if you don't hit it right, it ends up slowing you down significantly. And then you lose a lot of momentum, especially if you're in a high gear, you lose a lot of momentum before you can hit this escalator. And so as we get ready to go, I start ramping up my RPMs and just push as hard as I can down on the pedals. You see some flames coming out from other guys, flame coming out from me as well. Hit about just over 700 watts to the top. As we get to the top, we start to pass DW10, and we're just again focusing on getting through and getting to the finish line, since we have about a kilometer and a half left to go. And at this point, especially with that surge up the escalator, my legs are cooked. I know at this point I can give a good burst of energy where I can do another minute long pull, no big deal. But to be able to pull for the rest of the kilometer, 1,300 meters left to go, I was like, I don't know if I can do that. So I let the team know, like, hey, I'm pushing up to the front. I'll take the next minute or so out to, I'll take it out to 41 minutes here and just hold as best I can in that, 3.8 to 4.0 range, and just focused on how far I can get the team to then basically be able to drop them off as close to the finish line as possible. And so as we start cruising through, again, we are just all of us at this point. I wish I had the audio because you could hear the silence from some of our guys of just pure pain. At this point, especially the C pace riders that kind of have the I don't want to say weaker, but they're lower end in terms of the 5 minute and 20-minute power. They are hurting. Like, these guys are absolutely hurting, and bravo to them to be able to stick with it the entire way. Like, that is, again, it's always fantastic to cross with as many people as possible on your squad, and that's kind of ultimately what ends up happening. And so Greg at this point is like, hey, just push, 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 keep going, push as hard as you can. So three of our guys ended up pushing forward. I did my best to kind of stay on their wheel, pushing up to 400 plus watts. But at this point, I wasn't worried about, being the fourth guy across the line. I saw four went up, and I was like, great, because that means I can just kind of, let myself ease onto the finish line, knowing that, my time was not going to be necessary for the team. So they ended up crossing the line. I ended up crossing the line, I think in seventh position, sixth position, something like that. And so, I knew that with the time that I crossed, we would definitely beat the rest of the competition in the latte league. And so when I saw that, I was absolutely excited. We started talking about it towards with the group on Discord, and so I'll post the what we actually finished at. And so as you can see, we are in 33rd place for the Frappe League or Frappe Division, which, hey, out of 270 teams, I am still very much excited about that. I've always wanted to race in the frappe to see how I would perform. And obviously, we'd still have a lot of work to do in order to do well in this division. So we'll see how we end up the next time. I'm traveling, so I won't be in the next race. But I gotta say, this race was absolutely fantastic. Great group of guys, and I know that if we continue to race with each other week after week, we will definitely make our way up the frappe ladder as well. So take care, guys, and I will catch you in the next race.
Hey guys, it's Miguel from that thing you just watched. Hope you enjoyed that video, whether it was topic on nutrition or racing or a combination of both. Feel free to come back. I will continue to put out videos like this and continue to showcase what you can do with smart nutritional strategies, combining that with racing, because that is what this channel is all about. And feel free to check in if you want to see more racing. Click on wherever the link's at, subscribe, and I will catch you guys on the next race.